Okay, this is Flying Dragon. Don't know much about it. Haven't really played it. I vaguely remember playing it 20 years ago, but other than that, can't tell you much about it. Goal. This is a pretty decent soccer game for its time. Kind of a top-down perspective, but not a bad sports game at all on the NES. Golf. One of the original NES sports games. It's pretty decent for its time, although it's rather basic. It's shown from top down. Line up your shot, and then it goes into kind of behind the golfer view. It's your normal 3-click meter. Hit it once for power, and then once again for accuracy. So definitely one to check out. It's a pretty common game. It's not bad for its time. That's one thing you got to keep in mind. Top secret episode, Galgo 13. This isn't a bad side scroller. Um, from what I recall, there's two different kinds of levels. One side scrolling, and then another is kind of a primitive first person shooter where you scroll the crosshair around the screen, try to take out enemies. Goonies 2. The funny thing about this is there actually wasn't a second Goonies movie, but this is a side-scrolling platformer, as so many NES games were at the time. It's not really bad. Gyromite. Can't play this one anymore. I don't have Rob the Robot. I guess it would be possible to play with a friend, but you need that second controller in there because Rob would hold it, and you would have to tell him what to do, whether to raise the blue pylons or lower them down. So, wasn't the greatest game of its time, but it was innovative. Hoops. This was a pretty decent one-on-one basketball game. I'm not a big fan of basketball myself. It's a decent game to have in the collection. And from what I remember, there's a couple of unique characters that you can select. They both have advantages and disadvantages over each other, but not a bad sports game on the NES. This is ice hockey. One of the first sports games again. It's a really good hockey game for its time. Came out in 1986, if I recall. You can correct me if I'm wrong. But you had three different types of players. Wasn't teams of five. It was actually teams of four, including the goalie. You had the skinny guy that was quick, the regular sized guy that was pretty decent all around, and your fat guy that was a decent checker. But this is a good one to check out if you're into hockey. Iron Sword, Wizards and Warriors 2. Funny thing to note about this game, if you look at the cover, Fabio is actually on the cover there. But basically, other than that, it's Wizards and Warriors. It's pretty much the same as the first game. It's just a sequel. Jack Nicklaus Golf. This is a game I have several copies of. I've acquired. It's not a favorite game of mine. Again, it's a improvement over the original NES Golf, but it's still a golf game. Can't really recommend it to you. Jordan versus Bird, one-on-one. This is one of the original basketball games. It's probably the first that I can remember playing. It's definitely improvement on hoops. However, instead of multiple characters, you can pick between Michael Jordan or Larry Bird. It's got the one-on-one mode, and it's also got the slam dunk competition with Michael Jordan and the three-point contest with Larry Bird. So, pretty decent basketball game. Karate Champ. This was an arcade port. I've heard a lot of people say negative things about it. I actually happen to like it. It's one of the early fighting games. Obviously, the arcade version's a little bit better, but I've got pretty fond memories of this. It's just difficult to get used to the controls, but once you do, it's not bad. Kid Nicky Radical Ninja. Another arcade port. Seems like most of Data East games that were on the NES were ports of arcade games. Again, it's just kind of your typical side scroller. Funny thing to notice, if you see Kid Nicky actually has a mullet, so that's pretty typical of 80s. But so's the pink cover there. Just wanted to check out, not bad. King's Knight. This is actually Square's first game. Most people know Square for their RPGs, Final Fantasy and things of that nature. They call King's Knight actually a action RPG, but it's not much of an RPG. It's like a top-down scroller. It kind of seems like an old shooter, but you've got 4 different characters and 5 levels. Each one gets their own level, and at the end they all come together. It's definitely a good nostalgic piece, but it's a pretty common game. Legacy of the Wizard. This is a decent action RPG. Like I said in my first part, I'm not sure if this is the first part or the second part to Fox Xanadu, but it has something in common with it. It's in the same series. I wish I could tell you the name of the series off the top of my hand, but this is really an enjoyable game. It's one to check out. Legendary Wings, another arcade port. This one's by Capcom. It's got 2 different types of level. Your main levels are shooters, overhead scrolling shooters, and you see that mouth there in the bottom right hand corner. You can actually get sucked into there, and at that point it becomes a side scrolling shooter. It's a classic arcade game, so that might be another one that you'd like to check out. Mach Rider. It's a post-apocalyptic racing game. It's one of the original Black Label games. It's not bad in itself, but it's pretty primitive. But it's a great reminiscent NES game of the time. Mad Magazine Spy vs. Spy. This is definitely a game that you want to play multiplayer. It's pretty fun, but it gets old pretty fast. It's your typical ruse of Mad Magazine in the cartoon, but I've got a lot of memories of playing this with my friends, and it's still pretty fun when you got 2 players. The Moffat Conspiracy. This is another GOGO 13 game. I don't know what I can say about this that I haven't said about the first one earlier in the video. It's pretty much the same thing. It's just a continuation in the story. Mission Impossible. Good Ultra game. It's got several different levels in it. Some are top down, others are vehicular stages. Like I said, it's pretty typical of most Ultra games. It's not bad. It's got some difficult stages to it, a lot like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles does, but it's a good one to try. You can probably find this pretty cheap on eBay or at a flea market.